People are just lifting the VM as it is and shifting it into the cloud. The stuff we're learning on a day-to-day basis as IT professionals is suddenly out of date. These people with this cloud knowledge are expensive. It's quite hard for especially local government to procure this talent and nurture it and keep that talent.
Correct.
I see time and time again people trying to adapt their projects midway. Suddenly a new technology will come out and they'll go, oh, shiny thing over there. You know, all the attention's drawn. Always got to think about the end user.
Exactly, yeah.
If it's too complicated, they'll find a way around it. They go to bed fine. The security team suddenly wake up and go, ah!
I read online about Microsoft potentially linking executives' bonuses to security and security incidents.
For us on the ground, this is going to be...
Hello and welcome to the Cantium podcast in partnership with Public Sector Focus. My name is Matt Cooper, Technical Account Director at Cantium. With me today is Grant Barnes, who's the Threat and Vulnerability Manager at Cantium, to talk about all things cloud security and cloud adoption. Right then, Grant. So what mistakes do you think public sector organisations are making when they're considering moving to the cloud?
I think much like many other sectors, the public sector in particular, because of the funding, unfortunately, but everyone seems to be making the same sort of decisions of, instead of looking at the services or functions that they currently have on their infrastructure and understanding the root of what they are actually doing, people are just lifting the VM as it is and shifting it into the cloud. Exactly. So that's the main thing I'm seeing. We need to just take a step back and go, do I really need 4 virtual machines and a database server to deliver this service? Or is there something in the cloud that's been developed that can just, be a Power Automate app that links to a database in the cloud? Reduce the complexities, reduce the exposure, and get rid of that technical debt.
Yeah, that's right. And I think, as you say, taking a step back, isn't it? And the training as well, and making sure staff are all bought into it, I suppose, and adoption and everything else is a big thing because the language is all different sometimes, isn't it? And, depending on the provider and everything. So,
that's a very good point because, just this year, Microsoft have changed AAD, Azure Active Directory, to Entra ID.
Exactly, yeah.
The stuff we're learning on a day-to-day basis as IT professionals is suddenly out of date a year later. It's all about the constant learning.
Exactly, yeah. So in terms of knowledge and third-party assurance and oversight and all of those types of things, why do you think that's important and how can that help really?
Things change awfully quickly with the cloud. So by partnering with a third party, you're shifting that responsibility, but also leaning on those expertise. These people with this cloud knowledge are expensive. It's quite hard for especially local government to procure this talent and not only procure it, but nurture it and keep that talent.
Correct, yeah.
So by partnering with third-party organisations, you're able to tap into that talent, which otherwise is just out of reach for some organisations.
That's the thing. It's ever evolving, isn't it? And and there's a lot more to it, I think, sometimes than what people really understand. It's very complex.
It's a whole culture shift moving to the cloud. It's not just a case of turn on a database and it's on. It's like I say, taking back services, understanding what they do, and changing how operational resource work fundamentally. It's no longer jump onto a virtual machine, change some settings. It's just the cloud. Yeah, it's all at the same layer.
And I think also people don't understand that the language and translating it all to the cloud is different than it is on premise, for example. And all of that, you've almost got to translate everything again, if you like, and learn it again. So it's quite a learning curve.
Exactly. We go from virtual machines in ESXi with access control lists at a network layer and firewall, egress, ingress protections, and suddenly we're talking about the cloud and we've got virtual machines still, but we've also got compute, Kubernetes, containerization. Suddenly access control lists are now network security groups.
Exactly,
all about translating, isn't it?
It is, yeah. So Grant, why do you think that organisations aren't, if you like, employing that oversight and third-party assurance and all of that knowledge that comes from Cantium and other companies? Why do you think that they're not doing that?
I think like I mentioned, it really does always come back to financials. At the end of the day, every business decision comes back to finances. And I think it's very hard to understand the talents that you require in the modern age.
Yeah, true.
It's very hard to procure that talent that is very talented at every aspect that the cloud can offer. Because the cloud is developing at such a pace that new technologies are coming out daily, almost. Things are changing, like I mentioned. Names of things are changing. So it's quite hard to procure talent that understands all of this. You can see that, someone's a professional in this area.
Correct, yeah.
Someone's a professional in that area. And for normal organizations, that's a very large operational expense in procuring all of the talent that's an SME in each area and bring them together to deliver the ultimate function that you're requiring.
Yeah, I mean, it's no different than having a team of network engineers and a team of desktop support people and all the rest of it, isn't it? It's the same thing, I suppose.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's quite daunting, I suppose, if you have to start from scratch, really.
Exactly. The traditional model, you'd have a DBA hosting,
That's right.
whatever. Now, suddenly you've got all of these different services, containerization, and it's hard to find the talent that can just switch between them all. So
I suppose that's why it's so important as well to use trusted partners, I suppose, that have got that public sector experience and not somebody that's not tried and tested, I suppose, or got that experience.
Exactly, because public sector, there are some nuances that they have,
absolutely,
compared to other organisations. So
definitely,
the fact that they've not only got protection to life services, social care, immediate response services that always need to be live, right the way down to, private, thinking about government members, private functions and secure emails that need to go between them both. There are all these different aspects that you need very talented people. You need someone that knows about web applications to support the web applications. You need to know different talent in different areas. And this is why it's quite hard for those organisations to procure that talent.
Yeah, I agree. Absolutely. And I suppose the challenges with public sector around budgets and obviously the financials, which are probably far worse than maybe larger private organisations, makes it more challenging to deliver what they need and what they want,
Exactly. They get the exposure, understanding of all their different services. They understand which is the most needed by the public, but also the most vulnerable, so to speak. They set aside budget to deal with that, and then suddenly they're a council. Something else may happen completely unrelated to IT. That funding needs to disappear, essentially. And we see that time and time again, don't we?
So then how can organisations, I suppose, build in that knowledge and third-party assurance and everything, but do it in a cost-effective way? How can they, try and do that?
Yeah, so going back to, the first question that I answered, understanding the services that you're hosting, the functions that you're doing, understanding exactly what they do, and then also understanding what's available from the cloud, for example. And don't deviate from what you've designed. Yes, technology changes. Technology is moving at such a pace that what we feel is correct now will be totally different in a couple of years' time.
Yeah.
And I see time and time again people trying to adapt their projects midway. There's been delays, things have happened, and then suddenly a new technology will come out and they'll go, oh, shiny thing over there. All the attention's drawn. And I think that's the major mistake. Don't forget on why you set out on that original project, what you were originally trying to do, deliver that, and then look at the horizon. Don't try and to change mid project.
No, I think, coming on to that really, I think that I liken it in a way a bit to a showroom, if you like, and it's all there for you if you want it, but, you can spend as little or as much as you want to spend. And as you say, you need to try and stick to what the original scope was as much as possible and focus on what's really important to you. Otherwise, you can end up going off in all different directions, which can then cause more complexities and more issues along the way.
Oh, yes. I think it's very important to remember get the basics right.
Yeah.
Always
Exactly.
bring it back to the basics. As soon as you've got that right, you can then
build on it. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. Another thing that I noticed, Grant, was that I read online about Microsoft potentially linking executives' bonuses to security and security incidents and that type of thing. Is that something that you're aware of?
Yeah, there have been many conversations in the community on this one.
I bet, yeah.
It's good to see, to be honest with you. But yeah, from what I understand, from what I've heard and what I've read, is that at least a portion of the executives' compensation going forward will be directly tied to Microsoft's ability to deliver cybersecurity and bolster cybersecurity services. So, although that sounds a bit like, antitrust is coming in and they're getting slapped on the wrist slightly, I think actually let's spin this and take it at face value. For us on the ground, this is going to be quite good.
Yeah.
We've got all these holes in Microsoft's products because we know vulnerability, security misconfigurations constantly. We're going to start seeing a lot more security focus, not just around different products coming from Microsoft, but the products they're already hosting for us. We're going to see better security, better development, and hopefully, touch wood, a reduction in malicious activities.
Well, that can only be a good thing, I suppose, for everyone. And it is quite commonplace, I suppose, isn't it? That's security has to, or cybersecurity and everything needs to come from the top down.
Yes,
and it needs to be something which is fully adopted from the top, rather than it being bottom up. So it's, in a way, they're sort of, I suppose, trying to assure that that's going to happen.
Yeah, that's on their roadmap.
And tying it. Yeah, exactly. I suppose if that does happen, and the information is true. So yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see where that goes.
Yeah, watch this space. Only good things can come, hopefully.
Yeah, absolutely. So where do you think then that cloud adoption and cloud security? Where do you think all of this is heading then? And what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so with cloud security, it's developing at such a pace. I know I keep saying it, but it's evolving. It's moving very quickly, and I think by Microsoft having a focus on cybersecurity first, they're definitely going to, with the executives' bonuses being tied to it. We're going to see better security practices coming out of solutions from the get-go. I mean, for example, with Authenticator, MFA, for example.
Yeah.
We all know MFA is needed. We all know we should use it on every service. And Microsoft themselves have a very good solution, I should say. However, do you remember when it first sort of came out, it was just yes, no?
Yeah, that's correct.
MFA
the number
fatigue.
matching and all of that, yeah.
And that's what we've seen, haven't we? Now we've got number matching.
That's correct, yeah.
So I can see, instead of these products coming out straight away and, people trying to adapt to them and then, now we've got to change it because it needs to be even more secure.
Yeah.
I feel as though we're going to have products coming out that are secure from the get-go that people can easily adopt as well, because we've also always got to think about the end user.
Exactly, yeah.
If it's too complicated,
Then
they'll
they're
find a
not
way
gonna
around
do
it.
Exactly, that's right, yeah.
Just like someone's phone pinging all night saying yes, no, yes, no. Eventually they're going to say, go away, yes. Oh, now I'll go back to bed. They go to bed fine. The security team suddenly wake up and go, ah.
Yeah. Yeah, no.
So yeah, that's where I can see cloud ultimately going. Products coming out from the get-go, hardened, more secure, that the public can easily adopt.
I think what we're seeing as well, because even going back a few years ago when I started within IT and everything, and in that area, ICT security, cyber security was really seen, I suppose, as something that was an optional, and not something that was a necessity by any means at all. And I think it's only because of breaches and all of those types of things that now it's companies of their stance has completely changed, and now it is an essential role for companies to have, and it's not something that they can really skip on. And obviously that's really good. It's
very good,
vital. Yeah,
and let's face it, fear forces change.
It does.
And
yeah, absolutely. Bad publicity and all of that. Yeah, exactly.
We do need to address that part, though. The fear aspect. There's a common misconception that cybersecurity is rocket science. It's very hard. If we bring it back, it's just technology and human psychology.
It is, yeah.
Fundamentally, that's all it is.
Yeah. It is, yeah. And making sure the processes all line up with what's happening in practice.
Exactly.
It's really important, yeah. Okay, well, thanks. That was really interesting and insightful, Grant. It's been good to have you here today and to speak with you. Thanks very much.
Thanks for having me. It's been great.